Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine a scene from a long time ago at a place called Jetavana.
Hmm.
There's this spiritual teacher, an
Hmm.
elder, really respected by his students.
Right.
And these students, they're eager, they want to understand the path, so they go to him with this really crucial question.
A very personal one.
Yeah, deeply personal. Have you attained any special distinction, like any spiritual fruit, any realization?
Okay.
But instead of answering, silence. He just doesn't say anything.
Hmm.
And then, shortly after, he passes away, without ever revealing where he was at, spiritually speaking.
Wow. That must have been tough for the students.
Totally. They're heartbroken.
Hmm.
Not just because he died, which is sad enough, but because of this mystery, this unanswered question he took with him.
It's a real moment of, well, profound uncertainty for them, isn't it? Their guide is gone, and they're left wondering about his actual level.
Yeah.
It must have made them question everything.
Exactly. So what do? They do the only thing they can, really. They go to the Buddha.
Seeking answers.
Yes. Crying, distressed, looking for comfort, and maybe, just maybe, an answer to this lingering question.
And that's really where our deep dive kicks off today.
It is. We're pulling insights from excerpts of a commentary on the Dhammapada, specifically this story called Anāgāmittheravatthu.
Which translates as this story of the Anāgāmī elder.
Right. So our mission today is to really get into this story. Why was the teacher silent? What had he actually attained?
And what was the lesson the Buddha revealed? The one that sort of shifted everything for the students and brought them, well, peace.
We want to explore that core teaching, especially this really fascinating idea of being one whose stream goes upwards.
Uddhaṃsota. What does that actually mean in terms of spiritual progress? That's what we want to unpack.
Okay, so let's properly set the scene, like the source describes it. The Buddha is at Jetavana.
Okay.
We've got this elder, the Anāgāmittheravatthu, and his students, his Saddeviharika.
His disciples.
And the key moment, the real catalyst, is that question they ask him. Have you reached any special distinction? Any visatchagamo?
That question just hangs in the air, doesn't it? It really highlights that whole dynamic, the student-teacher relationship.
It does. They rely on him not just for teachings, but, to see the path actually embodied.
For validation, in a way.
But here's the twist. The mystery deepens. He doesn't answer. And the source, it tells us he felt embarrassed. Harayamanoti.
Embarrassed. That sounds odd for a spiritual master, right?
It does. But the Buddha, he later explains what was going on inside the teacher's head.
Ah, okay.
The teacher thought, and this is really key, he thought, well, even householders, lay people, they attain the Anāgāmī fruit, so...
So it wasn't quite special enough for him to announce.
Kind of. He decided, I'll only tell them about my attainment when I reach Arahantship, the final goal.
Ah, I see. So it wasn't embarrassment like shame. It was more like deep humility, or maybe a really high personal standard for what counts as, truly achieved.
Exactly. He saw the Anāgāmī level as, relatively speaking, something attainable even outside the monastic order. He was waiting for the absolute peak.
Waiting for perfection before making a declaration.
And the tragic part, at least from the student's viewpoint, was that because he waited, well, he passed away, kalakato, without ever telling them.
Oof.
But the story gives us, the readers, a clue before the students find out. It mentions he was reborn in the Suddhavasa heavenly realm.
Okay, and that's a huge clue if you know the cosmology.
Explain that.
Well, the Suddhavasa realms, the Pure Abodes, they're only for Anāgāmis,
Yeah.
non-returners.
Ah.
Beings who have broken the lower fetters and will never be reborn in the human world or any lower realm again. They attain final nibbana from those realms.
So his rebirth location itself confirms his attainment level even before the Buddha spells it out.
Precisely. It's the narrative's way of letting us in on the secret first.
Which brings us back to the students and their grief. They're absolutely heartbroken. The source says they cried, they lamented.
Understandably.
So they go find the Buddha, pay their respects, and just sit there completely distraught. The Buddha sees them naturally and asks, why are you crying?
And their first answer is the obvious one, right?
Yeah. Our teacher, our Upachaya, he's passed away. The universal pain of loss. And the Buddha gives that classic Buddhist perspective, doesn't he? He tells them not to worry, reminding them death is just a fixed phenomenon.
Guvadhamma nameso. It's the nature of things. Conditioned existence is impermanent.
A profound truth, of course, but maybe not quite hitting the specific source of their deep distress in that moment.
Right, because it wasn't just about death itself. They acknowledged that, sure, death is certain, but they explain the real issue.
Yeah.
They say, we asked our teacher about his special attainment, and he died without telling us. That was the thing causing their suffering.
The unanswered question, the not knowing, it left them feeling lost, distressed, dukkha, as the text says. Did he make it? Did the path he taught actually work for him?
Exactly. It's that uncertainty that's really eating at them.
And this is where the Buddha steps in fully. He tells them, okay, don't worry anymore about that.
The big reveal.
Yes. He pulls back the curtain. He tells them straight. Your Pujahaya had attained the Anāgāmī fruit.
Wow. Imagine the relief for those students.
Must have been immense. And the Buddha even confirms why he was silent.
The reason we discussed.
Exactly. He confirms the teacher felt, well, maybe reticent is a better word than embarrassed. Reticent because even householders reach that level, and he was aiming higher, wanting to wait for Arahantship.
So the Buddha validates the teacher's inner thoughts, too.
He does, and he confirms the rebirth fact we already knew. Yep, he passed away and was reborn in the Uddhaṃsota realms.
Case closed on his attainment level, then.
Definitely. And then the Buddha gives them the core comfort, the real solace, asasa. He says their teacher's mind had reached a state. How does it go?
Not bound to sensual pleasures. Kamesu apatibadasito.
Ah, yes.
That's
it. That's the absolute hallmark of the Anāgāmī, the non-returner, isn't it?
It is. They've completely cut through that level of attachment. The pull of the sensory world is gone.
Their focus, their whole being is oriented differently now. Upwards, you might say.
Precisely. Upwards. And it's right at this point, having laid out the attainment and its key feature, freedom from sensuality, that the Buddha introduces the term we wanted to focus on.
The main event.
He calls the teacher Uddhaṃsota.
One whose stream goes upwards.
Yes. And then he recites a verse, a gatha, that defines this type of person. It really breaks down the qualities.
Okay, great. Let's really dig into this verse now, using the explanations from the commentary that the source provides. This is where we get the nitty-gritty. The verse is, Chandashato anakate manasafa kafutosha kamesu apatibada chitto udamatoti vukatiti.
Right. And the commentary is super helpful here, giving specific meanings. Let's start with the one we just mentioned. Kamesu apatibada chitto.
Mind not bound to sensual pleasures.
Exactly. And the commentary adds that this is achieved specifically by way of the Anāgāmī path. So it confirms this is a result of that particular stage of practice. It's the foundation.
Makes sense. That's the defining achievement. Okay, what else describes this person?
Then there's Manasaka Futosha. The commentary explains this as being pervaded or filled with the insights and realizations of the three lower path and fruit attainments.
So Sotapadhi, Saktagamī, and Anāgāmī. Stream entry, once returner, and non-returner.
Correct. It means their mind isn't just focused on the Anāgāmī level in isolation. It's saturated, infused with the wisdom gained at all the preceding stages. It's cumulative.
Okay, so mind free from sensuality, check. Mind pervaded by the insights of the earlier paths, check. Then we have Chandajato and Akat. That sounds profound.
It really is. Chandajato is explained as having arisen desire or maybe attained enthusiasm, but it's a specific kind of desire.
Not craving.
No, not craving for pleasure. It's the desire for action, the wholesome impulse directed towards the ultimate goal, and that goal is anakat.
Which the commentary defines as the unrevealed or unproclaimed, and it says this refers specifically to Nibbana.
Yes, Nibbana is the anakata.
Why unproclaimed? That's intriguing.
Well, according to this commentary's explanation, it's because Nibbana can't be described in ordinary terms. You can't say it's made by this or that. You can't give it attributes like blue or yellow.
Ah, so it transcends our usual ways of describing things, which are based on causes, conditions, sensory input.
Exactly. It's unspoken or unproclaimed in that sense. It's beyond conceptual fabrication.
Wow. Okay, so Chandajato and Akate together describes someone who has this powerful, focused, active enthusiasm, this drive, aimed squarely at Nibbana, the goal that fundamentally defies description.
Precisely. It's not a passive state. It's an active orientation towards the unconditioned, the indescribable liberation.
That's a really powerful image. Okay, so we have freedom from sensuality, a mind filled with path wisdom, this driving enthusiasm for the indescribable goal. Which brings us to the term itself, Uddhaṃsota.
One whose stream goes upwards.
How does the commentary define that specific trajectory? Is it just a metaphor?
Actually, the commentary gives a very specific, almost literal definition based on the path of rebirth for an Anāgāmī.
Oh.
It says, Uddhaṃsota refers to someone who, after attaining the Anāgāmī state, is reborn in the Aviha realm. That's one of the Siddhavasa realms we mentioned.
Right, the Pure Abodes.
And from there, they proceed by way of rebirth, systematically, through the higher Siddhavasa realms, eventually reaching the highest one, the Akanitha realm.
So the upward stream is literally their path through these highest celestial realms, never returning downwards.
That's exactly how this commentary explains it. It's a specific course, and it concludes by saying their upajjhaya was like that.
He was on that specific upward track.
Yes. So putting it all together, the teacher had this focused desire for nibbana, Jamdejato Anahate. His mind was filled with the fruits of the lower paths, and especially the Anāgāmī attainment, Manasa Kafutosha, meaning he was free from sensual bonds, Kamasu Apati Barachito. And because of all this, his trajectory after death was fixed toward the highest realms, Uddhaṃsota.
That full explanation connecting all those Pali terms to the teacher's state and destiny, wow, that must have just completely transformed the student's understanding and grief.
Absolutely. It did more than just answer their question about if he attained something. It showed them what he attained, why he was silent, what that attainment meant internally, and where it led. It validated everything.
And the source mentions the impact, right?
It does. It notes that at the end of this discourse, the monks listening attained spiritual fruit. There's a slight variation in sources about which fruit, so it's safest to say they gained significant spiritual realization from hearing this.
So the teaching was immediately effective for them.
Yes, and not just for them. The source adds that the discourse was beneficial, Sathaka, even for the Great Assembly, Mahajanasapi. So it had a wider positive impact too.
What a journey. We started with this poignant mystery of a teacher's silence. We followed his students in their grief to the Buddha, and then through the Buddha's words and the commentary's detailed breakdown, we've done this deep dive into the Anāgāmī stage, into Nibbana as the unproclaimed, and into what it really means to be one whose stream goes upwards.
Yeah, the key takeaways feel really potent. You know, attainment isn't always loud or announced. Sometimes there's a humility or a different standard at play.
Right, and the Anāgāmī stage signifies this fundamental break from sensual attachment, a huge liberation.
And that concept of nibbana as anakata, the unproclaimed, that's quite something. It's defined by what it isn't, in a way.
And finally, this idea that spiritual progress isn't necessarily over at death for someone like an Anāgāmī. There's this definite upward trajectory, this stream.
Exactly.
So for you listening, what does this ancient story bring up? Does it shift how you think about spiritual progress? Maybe less about the labels we achieve and more about the inner states, like that freedom from attachment.
And what about nibbana being the unproclaimed? How does that land with you if the ultimate goal is fundamentally beyond our words and concepts?
Yeah, it leads to a final thought, maybe a provocative one to leave you with. Given that nibbana is called anakata, the unproclaimed, the undescribable, what does that really imply about how we should even approach seeking it?
Right. If it can't be captured by descriptions based on cause, condition, or attributes, is it something we find like an object? Or is it realized in a way that just utterly transcends description? Does it require a different kind of seeking, maybe less grasping and more? Letting go?